Okay, so hello. If you are randomly stumbling on this, because this is on YouTube, welcome. And there's probably a bigger chance that you're probably here because I assume future me, I'm gonna post this at least on my Insta story. I think videos like this, they're easier to navigate on YouTube. I can timestamp what I'm talking about and lay things out a little bit easier. So we're just going to kind of talk about some of my personal experiences and my view of how things are going on regarding Black lives, regarding African American culture. And I think it's a good place to start would be my experience with police. And one of the main injustices that I've gone through, and I've told many people this story, but it's the way that I've internalized it is a lot differently now that I'm older. When I was 15, I was hanging out with a couple of my friends. I don't think they'll mind if I say their names. Eric, Jay, and Tegan. And we were in King Soopers, just a regular store, a regular convenience store. And we go in, we get some stuff, we walk out, and I have a King Soopers bag with gummy bears in it. And I'm next to my friend Eric. And as we're walking, a police car drives up super fast and turns quick sideways. They do that, they turn sideways to get out of their car so that they can do it quickly in the case of a threat, in the case of a response. So they do that. And as this cop is doing this, I'm hitting Eric with a King Soopers bag, and Eric is like, stop hitting me. He's like, bro. And I was like, why? What are they gonna do, arrest me? And I was just joking around. And so, real quick, going into this, I think it's necessary to mention that my parents are from Kingston, Jamaica. And so moving to Colorado, moving to the United States, they want the best for myself and for my older siblings. They wanted the best, and they want the best. So they would talk to me about police, they'd talk to me about authority, and they would instill inside of me a respect that I would have for people in this. So I would have a trust, right? They'd want me to be careful, but they'd still say, hey, like, you know, you have a respect for these people. So once again, I'm hitting Eric with the King Soopers bag. He's telling me to stop, and I'm like, what are they gonna do, arrest me? And we're walking home. It was our first day of summer. And as we're doing this, the police officer says, stop, I need to talk to you. And I remember actually laughing because I was like, we have done nothing. He's like, no, I need all of you boys to stop. So we stop. He splits us up. It was Jay and I, and then Tegan and Eric, and we were in different spots. He spaced us out. And so basically they just said that there were people behind King Soopers throwing bombs, throwing some sort of whatever, making a ruckus. And among that group was an African American, and they were all on bikes. We weren't all on bikes, but I'm African American. And so the issue then was that a detective came up. She looked at us. She looked at the police officer, and she said, there's no case here, that's them. They're the ones who did it. There was no chance given to me. There's no chance given to my friends. All that mattered was that they had an African American in their sight. And no matter what I said, no matter how I tried to defend myself, no matter how polite I was, none of that mattered because my skin had a darker complexion. And when I went home and told my parents about it, when I told my dad about it, he was pissed. My brother was pissed. They were ready to go down to the station and lay down, dude. They were ready to run the hands. But I remember at the time, my response was they were just doing their job. But now that I'm really thinking back to it and looking back, and I've recognized it before, but in light of all these things happening, that was not right. There's injustice, and that was not right based off of the color of my skin. And so looking at statistics and seeing the people who have got it even worse than I have, we see that African Americans were 2.5 times more likely to get killed by police officers than white people. People try to throw different statistics, but you look at African Americans, we make up what, like 12% of the United States, and we're still targeted that much. There's an issue going on, and there's a disparity between different states. I live in Colorado, and the amount of people who are killed by police is like 10% and under, right? So it's lesser. But when you move east, we see upward to 30%, and that's where the main numbers are going on. So there's a problem that is going on. So when I see the voices being raised, when I see the movement and everything going on social media, it is a good thing. People are being educated. But that's what I want to talk about next, is cancel culture. And I feel like a lot of people would rather cancel someone, and a lot of people would rather let go of a conversation than have something that challenges their viewpoint, maybe potentially make them change, right? A lot of people are afraid of change. A lot of people are afraid of pruning out these parts that are bad in them, or being involved in a discourse that would allow their viewpoint to be challenged. And so I'm not saying that people should go without repercussions, or that people should go without punishment. But I'm saying that instead of writing someone off, instead of saying once a racist, always a racist, look at it from the viewpoint of, I have an opportunity to educate someone. I have an opportunity to bring someone on my side so that they can fight for what I believe in, right? I'll always say Black Lives Matter, and I'll always believe in that, because it is important to see that there's an issue going on in the African American community that is not happening across the board. And so because of that, I'm going to stand with my people, right? I think in the description, I'm going to put in different things that you can look at, different sources, different reading material, just to continue to give you a perspective. I think during this, we're all going to recognize that we have a different viewpoint, or I'm never going to be able to see through the lens of a white person, or an Asian person, or a Mexican person, or whatever race, as they're not going to be able to see the viewpoint or the lens of myself. But I just want you to think about this, especially anybody who is uncomfortable with Black Lives Matter and is like, I don't know if I want to support that. Recognize that privilege lies under even that decision, whether you want to support or not. I've had experiences where it's been made glaringly obvious that I'm different, and that my skin color makes people uncomfortable. People tighten their purse. People cross the street when I'm on the same road as them, and then they cross back when I pass them. It becomes glaringly obvious that I'm not wanted, and it doesn't matter. Sorry, I was in the roundabout and some guy almost crashed into me. It doesn't matter what my past is. It doesn't matter who my family is. It doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is my skin. And because of that, they've passed judgment solely based off of that. I felt it. And so many of my people have felt it. And that's why we're standing up. That's why we're talking about this now, is because this is an important issue. My phone was overheating, so I had to cool it off a little bit. I think my last point was just talking about privilege. And if you're questioning whether you have it or not, if you've never had to think about your skin color, then you have it. The little things, one time Grant and I, we were walking in the Mount Vista parking lot. We were just hanging out, and his car was out in the parking lot. We walked back to his car, and there was a cop who was looking at his car and just like writing down information. And I walked up, hands up at the cop, because we were just trying to get into Grant's car. We were about to leave. And even though I was hands up, even though I approached slow, even though everything was there, the cop stepped out of his car with the hand on his gun. So, dude, I'm just saying, there are a lot of little things that I've had time to think back on and recognize that there are things that are not okay. There's injustice. And so now that I'm older, I have an opportunity to really look into legislation. I have an opportunity to look into how do we defund police, how do we handle these situations, how do we look where there are corrupt police who have gotten away with things, and how do we bring their names back up so that the lives that have been lost, that justice would be served. We should all feel challenged. Once again, I cannot emphasize this enough, to have difficult conversations. If you face or talk to someone who has the wrong idea about systemic racism or racist ideologies, you have to approach that and you have to talk to them about it. You may need patience because you have to readdress certain things over and over again, but you just have to explain to them why there are things present. It wasn't even long ago that segregation was abolished. My parents were alive when that happened. You know what I mean? Your parents were alive. Your grandparents were alive. My people were seen as literal currency. We're talking about chattel slavery, transatlantic slave trade, test. That's an easy way to remember it. Like, currency. Can we think about how insane that is? So there are roots that have ran deep in my people, and that's why these things are still present. That's why these ideologies still exist. That's why there's a disparity between equality going on. That's what we're fighting for. It's important to also consider the sanctity of life. We see through our phones and through our screens, we watch John Wick, we watch all these action or thriller movies. I know that I do. I watch a lot of them. Through those same screens, we watch George Floyd, we watch Eric Garner. We see so many lives being taken away. Ahmaud. You can become desensitized to it and forget that you're actually watching a life vanish. And there should never be anything normal about accepting that. You should never feel like, oh, I've seen so many of these, so I'm not affected. You should be affected by every one, because there's a sanctity of life being taken away, and you shouldn't really even have to watch that to understand the severity of the situation. It's so sad. It's so heartbreaking. This is about to be dangerous, but I want to read a portion from Scripture, Titus 3:5. And that says, He saved us not because of works done by us in righteousness, but according to His own mercy, by the washing of regeneration and renewal by the Holy Spirit. I feel like that would be even a message that is unpopular in a lot of new word of faith movements or anything, because they're always saying, hey, there was something special inside of us why Jesus gave His life. But this is saying it was not of anything we've done. It wasn't because there was a golden kernel inside of us, but it was because of His mercy. And so we have to ask ourselves, what are we being saved from? What do you mean, Andre? I mean the sin that was in you. I don't mean by actions, I don't mean by things that are belittled, but I mean by even just your own placement on this earth, being born, that there is separation. That's what sin is separation from the Lord. And so that's what we're being saved from. And so that's a discussion in itself, but when I look at everything that's going on right now, we know that once again we would respond in love. So Christians, when you're looking at the Black Lives Matter movement, you may have disagreements with different things that in specifics that are being stood for, but on the notion, on the statement itself, Black Lives Matter, you need to have no issue with that whatsoever, and you need to fight for this. We need to raise our voices, because this is important. This isn't a trend. I don't care if you post black squares on your Insta for the rest of your life. If in person you're not standing up for justice, and if behind closed doors you're not really fighting for this, then it doesn't matter to me what you're posting. Live out the life that you're trying to show other people that you're living. Yeah, that's it.